Right now, somewhere in your house, it is quiet. Maybe the sky outside your window is still a bruised shade of blue. Maybe the birds haven't started yet. Maybe the only sound is your own breathing, slow and unaware of how important this exact moment actually is. You are about to make a decision you don't even know you're making. In the next few minutes, before your feet touch the floor, before your thumb finds your phone, before the first notification lights up your screen, you are going to decide something that almost nobody tells you matters. You are going to decide who is in charge of your mind today, you or the world. Nearly 2,000 years ago, a man who ruled the most powerful empire on earth woke up dreading the day ahead. He had wars to manage, men to bury, a body that was failing him, and a mind that kept slipping toward despair. And instead of reaching for distraction, he reached for a pen. He wrote himself a letter, not for us, not for history, just for himself, in the dark, before the palace stirred. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and the letter he wrote that morning has survived longer than the empire he ruled. It was never meant for publication. He wasn't writing for an audience. He was writing to himself, in the dark, trying to talk himself back into the kind of person he actually wanted to be, before the day had a chance to talk him out of it. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Read that line again and notice something strange about it. He isn't describing an easy life. He's describing the plainest facts of existence, breathing, thinking, feeling, and calling them a privilege anyway. That's not naive optimism from a man who never suffered. This is a man surrounded by war, disease, and betrayal, choosing on purpose, before his feet even touched the floor, to see his life as a gift rather than a burden. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because by the end of this, you are going to understand something that changes the shape of every single morning you have left. This is not about waking up earlier. This is not another productivity trick, and it isn't a checklist you're supposed to complete perfectly, or not at all. This is about a 2,000-year-old system, used by emperors, slaves, and exiles alike, for taking control of the only thing that has ever truly belonged to you: your own mind. Some of what you're about to hear will feel almost too simple to matter. Stick with it anyway. The most powerful ideas in Stoic philosophy were never complicated. They were just consistently ignored. Let's begin. The hour that belongs to no one. There is a strange kind of theft happening in most people's lives, and almost nobody notices it, because it happens before they're even fully awake. The moment your eyes open, before you've had a single independent thought of your own, you reach for your phone, and in that half second, you hand the keys of your mind over to strangers. A headline you didn't ask for, a message that irritates you, a stranger's opinion, a stranger's outrage, a stranger's emergency, suddenly living rent-free in your skull before you've even sat up in bed. The Stoics had a word for this kind of surrender. They called it living at the mercy of externals, and they considered it a quiet, invisible form of slavery. Epictetus knew this better than almost anyone who has ever lived, because he had actually been a slave. Born into bondage, his leg permanently damaged by a cruel master, he later became one of history's most influential teachers of freedom. And here is the strange part. He taught that freedom has almost nothing to do with your circumstances, and almost everything to do with what you allow into your mind first. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that for a second. Not master of his money, not master of his career, master of himself. There is a reason soldiers, monks, and athletes across history have all protected the earliest part of their day like it's sacred territory. It's because whoever gets there first gets to set the tone for everything that follows. If the world gets there first, you spend your whole day reacting. If you get there first, you spend your whole day directing. So here's the practice, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. For the first 10 minutes after you open your eyes, nothing digital touches your hand. No phone, no scrolling, no headlines. You just lie there or sit there and you let your own mind wake up before anyone else's noise does. It will feel uncomfortable at first. Your hand will twitch toward the nightstand out of pure habit. That twitch is not weakness, it's just a groove your brain has worn into itself over years of repetition. But grooves can be worn in new directions too. Give it 3 days, and the twitch gets quieter. Give it 3 weeks, and it's gone entirely. Notice too what actually happens in your body during those first unguarded minutes with a screen. Your heart rate shifts before you've even decided how you feel about what you're reading. Your shoulders tighten, your jaw sets, and you carry that low, humming tension into the shower, into breakfast, into a conversation with someone you love, without ever once tracing it back to its actual source. You'll swear the day started badly. In truth, the day never got the chance to start at all. Something else started it for you. This single hour, or even these single 10 minutes, this is where sovereignty begins. Before you owe anyone a reply, before the world has asked anything of you, this time belongs to no one but you, and how you spend it decides who walks out of that bedroom. The discipline of silence. Here's something almost nobody tells you about silence. It isn't empty. It's actually one of the most crowded places you will ever stand, because it's the only place where you can finally hear what's actually going on inside you, underneath all the noise you normally use to drown it out. Most people are terrified of silence without realizing it. That's why the television goes on the second someone walks into an empty house. That's why the podcast starts the moment the car engine turns over. Silence forces you to sit with yourself, and for a lot of people, that's the single scariest room in the house. But the Stoics treated silence as a tool, not a punishment. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, and yet one of its most disciplined thinkers, wrote constantly about the practice of withdrawing into yourself, not running away from life, but returning to it, on your own terms, from a place of steadiness rather than reaction. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Read that again, slowly, because it might be the most useful sentence you hear all week. Most of what ruins your morning hasn't even happened yet. It's a conversation you're dreading, a message you haven't sent. A worst-case scenario, your mind built out of nothing but fear and repetition. Silence is where you catch that pattern in the act, before it hijacks your whole day. Here's how this looks in practice. Find 5 or 10 quiet minutes. Sit somewhere you won't be interrupted. Close your eyes, if that helps you, or just soften your gaze toward nothing in particular. And then do the hardest thing modern life has trained you out of doing. Absolutely nothing. Don't try to empty your mind by force. That almost never works, and it just adds one more task to your morning. Instead, let your thoughts move like weather. A worry drifts in. You notice it, you let it drift back out. A memory surfaces, you notice it, you let it pass. You're not fighting your mind. You're simply refusing to be dragged along by it. Something interesting happens after a few days of this. You start to notice the difference between a thought that deserves your attention and a thought that's just noise. That skill, the ability to tell the difference between the two, might be the single most valuable skill a human mind can develop, and almost nobody teaches it, because almost nobody sits still long enough to learn it. Here's a question worth sitting with the next time you try this. What would you actually hear if you let the silence run for a full 10 minutes instead of cutting it short at 2, the moment it starts to feel unfamiliar? Most people never find out, because they mistake discomfort for a signal to stop. But discomfort in silence usually isn't a warning. It's just years of unexamined noise finally settling, the way dust takes a moment to fall after a room has been disturbed. Give it time to settle, and what's left underneath is almost always quieter, clearer, and far more honest than anything you were avoiding. The silence isn't the goal. The clarity that silence produces, that's the goal. And that clarity is waiting for you every single morning, completely free, if you're just willing to sit in the quiet long enough to find it. Waking, the body. Your mind is not the only thing that spent the night asleep. Your body did too, and if you skip past it, if you rush straight from the pillow to the desk, you're dragging a half-awake body through a fully awake day, and it shows up later as tension you can't explain, tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, and a strange low-grade heaviness that follows you around like a shadow. There's a beautiful idea buried in Stoic writing about the body, and it's easy to miss if you're only looking for quotes about willpower and discipline. The Stoics didn't see the body as separate from the mind, something to be dragged along or ignored. They saw it as the instrument through which everything else, courage, patience, self-control, actually gets practiced. You cannot rehearse discipline in your head forever. Eventually, your body has to be the one that proves it. Think of a blacksmith at the very start of the day, before the forge has fully caught fire. He doesn't throw the coldest metal straight into the hottest flame. He builds the heat slowly. He lets the fire wake up in stages. Your body works the same way. It doesn't need to be shocked awake. It needs to be invited awake. This doesn't require a gym or a nap or 30 minutes you don't have. It requires about 5 minutes and a willingness to actually pay attention while you move. Stretch your arms overhead and actually feel your shoulders wake up instead of thinking about your to-do list while you do it. Walk to the window and actually feel your legs carry your weight. Roll your neck slowly and notice exactly where you've been holding tension without even realizing it. Here's what most people get backwards about morning movement. They treat it like a chore to survive, something to rush through so they can get to the real part of the day. But the Stoics would argue the opposite. This is a real part of the day. This is where you practice paying attention on purpose, in a body that, let's be honest, has carried you through more than you probably ever thank it for. There's a quieter kind of gratitude in this too. Every stretch, every step, every breath that fills your lungs completely. These are small, private acknowledgements that you are, in fact, still here. Still breathing, still capable of movement. That's not nothing. Marcus Aurelius, remember, called this exact thing a precious privilege. To breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Your body is where all of that actually gets to happen. There's one more thing worth noticing here, something almost nobody mentions when they talk about morning movement. Your body is often more honest than your mind. Your mind can talk itself into believing everything is fine. Your body rarely lies quite as well. The tightness in your lower back, the stiffness in your neck, the shallow breath you didn't even realize you'd been taking. These are messages, not inconveniences. 5 unhurried minutes of paying attention to your body first thing in the morning is often the first honest conversation you have all day, and it happens before a single other person gets a chance to interrupt it. Wake it up gently. Wake it up on purpose. And notice how differently the rest of your morning feels once you do. What you read first, you become. Here's a question almost nobody asks themselves, and it might be the most important one in this entire video. What is the very first idea you allow into your mind each day? Because whatever it is, it's not neutral. It's not just passing through and leaving no trace. The first thing you read, watch, or scroll through in the morning becomes the lens you look through for everything that follows. Feed your mind outrage first thing, and suddenly the whole day feels vaguely threatening. Feed your mind comparison first thing, and suddenly everything you have feels slightly insufficient. Feed your mind wisdom first thing, and something completely different starts to happen. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just an emperor. He was, at his core, a student. Even while commanding armies, even while managing an empire under constant strain, he kept returning to the words of the philosophers who came before him. He copied down reminders to himself, not to impress anyone, not even to be read by anyone else, but simply so that when pressure came later in the day, wisdom would already be sitting there, ready, instead of having to be invented on the spot in the middle of a crisis. He wrote to himself, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's not a quote meant for a plaque on the wall. That's a man reminding himself, first thing, before the arguments and pressures of the day could talk him out of his own values. You don't need an hour for this. You need about 5 minutes and one meaningful sentence. Keep a small book near your bed, something with weight to it, a page of philosophy, a passage that challenges you, words from someone who thought seriously about how to live well. Before you open any app, open that instead. Read slowly. Read one paragraph, sometimes even just one line, and actually let it land, instead of rushing to the next thing. Some mornings, a single sentence will hit you in a way you didn't expect, and it will quietly guide a decision you make 6 hours later without you even realizing where that steadiness came from. Other mornings, nothing will seem to land at all, and that's fine too. The value isn't in forcing a breakthrough every single day. The value is in consistently choosing what gets to speak to you first, instead of leaving that choice up to whatever app happens to be loudest. Think back to the last time a single sentence, read at the right moment, seemed to rearrange something in you. Maybe it was years ago. Maybe you can still recite it. That's not a coincidence, and it's not something that only happens to certain people who are naturally more receptive than the rest of us. It happens because the mind, first thing in the morning, before it's been worn down by decisions and demands, is unusually open, unusually absorbent. Whatever you place in front of it in that state tends to stay, in a way that the same words read at 10 o'clock at night, exhausted and half distracted, almost never do. You are, whether you've noticed it or not, always being shaped by whatever you consume first. The only real question is whether you're choosing that shape on purpose, or just letting it happen to you by accident. The character you choose. Most people wake up thinking about what they need to do today. Almost nobody wakes up thinking about who they want to be today. And that difference, small as it sounds, might be the single biggest fork in the road between a life that feels directed and a life that feels like it's just happening to you. Here's the distinction the Stoics were obsessed with, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A goal depends on the outside world cooperating with you. Will the traffic be light? Will the client say yes? Will the day go smoothly? None of that is fully in your hands, no matter how hard you try to control it. But a character choice, the decision to be patient today, to be honest today, to stay calm under pressure today, that decision belongs entirely to you. Nothing external can take it away from you unless you hand it over yourself. Epictetus put it plainly. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Say it first, then do it, not the other way around. Most people let the day define who they become through it. The Stoics flipped that completely. Decide who you're going to be, and then let the day happen around that decision, rather than in spite of it. So here's the practice. After your silence, after your movement, after your reading, ask yourself one direct question, and actually wait for the answer, instead of rushing past it. How do I want to show up today? Not what do I need to accomplish? How do I want to be present while I accomplish it? Maybe today the answer is patience, because you already know a difficult conversation is coming. Maybe it's honesty, because you've been avoiding saying something true. Maybe it's simply steadiness, the decision not to let a bad hour convince you the whole day is ruined. Whatever it is, name it, out loud if you can. Written down if that helps it stick. And here's the part that makes this different from just another affirmation you say once and forget. You come back to it. When the day gets loud, when someone tests your patience, when something goes sideways that you absolutely did not plan for, you pause and you ask yourself, what did I decide this morning? That question, asked in the middle of chaos, has a strange power to pull you right back to center. There is something quietly powerful about the fact that this choice cannot be taken from you. Someone can take your time, someone can take your plans, your schedule, even your sense of how the day was supposed to go. Nobody, no matter what they do or say, can reach into you and take the decision you made this morning about who you were going to be. That decision stays intact even when everything around it falls apart. And that, more than any productivity system ever invented, is what real control actually looks like. You will not embody your intention perfectly every single day. Nobody does. Not even the Stoics themselves managed that. But the practice was never about perfection. It was about return. Falling short and coming back anyway, morning after morning, is not failure. That, more than anything else, is the actual practice. Weightless gratitude. There is a version of gratitude that's shallow, the kind where you list 3 things you're thankful for on autopilot without actually feeling any of them. And then there's a completely different kind, the kind the Stoics practiced, which is heavier, sturdier, and honestly, a lot more useful when life gets hard. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about gratitude from a life of comfort. He wrote it while managing plague, war, betrayal, and the slow decline of his own health. And still, he began mornings by reminding himself what a privilege it was to simply be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Not because life was easy, because he understood something most of us forget the moment things get difficult. Gratitude isn't a reward for a good life. It's a tool for surviving a hard one. Here's an exercise worth trying, and it's a little uncomfortable at first, which is exactly why it works. For just a moment, imagine this morning had been taken from you entirely. Imagine you simply hadn't woken up. Now open your eyes again, so to speak, and notice how different an ordinary Tuesday suddenly feels when you remember it was never actually guaranteed to begin with. Seneca understood this fragility better than most, because he lived surrounded by sudden death and reversals of fortune. He wrote, "Begin at once to live, and count each separate day as a separate life." Not because tomorrow is promised to be worse, because tomorrow was never promised at all, and the only day you have ever actually held in your hands is this one. So this morning, before you get swept into the demands of the day, place a hand over your chest, take 3 slow breaths, and name 3 specific things you're grateful for. Not vague categories like family or health. Specifics. The exact way someone laughed yesterday. The taste of that first sip of something warm. The fact that your legs, without complaint, carried you through an entire day you probably don't even remember thanking them for. This isn't about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Some mornings will be heavy, and pretending otherwise helps no one. But even inside a hard morning, there is almost always something small still standing. Your own resilience, someone who still shows up for you. One more chance to try again. Gratitude doesn't erase the difficulty. It just makes sure the difficulty isn't the only thing you're carrying. There's a reason this practice was never meant to be reserved for good days only. Anyone can feel grateful when life is easy. The Stoics were far more interested in what happens when it isn't, because that's the only place gratitude actually proves its worth. A grateful heart on an easy morning is pleasant. A grateful heart on a hard one is armor. The return here is the part almost every guide like this leaves out, and it's the part that actually determines whether any of this changes your life or just becomes something you watched once and forgot by Thursday. None of this works because you do it perfectly. It works because you keep coming back to it. There will be mornings you oversleep, mornings you reach for your phone out of habit before you catch yourself, mornings the silence feels impossible and your mind won't stop racing, and gratitude feels like the last thing you have access to. That is not failure. That is simply what practicing something difficult actually looks like for every single person who has ever tried to change a pattern they've carried for years. The Stoics never asked for perfection, and it's worth sitting with that for a second, because so much of modern self-improvement quietly demands exactly that, and then makes you feel like a failure the moment you fall short of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself precisely because he kept forgetting his own values under pressure, over and over, for years. The writing wasn't proof that he had it figured out. It was proof that he kept returning to try again, morning after morning, for the rest of his life. That's the real secret, hiding underneath everything you just heard. It was never about having a flawless morning. It's about becoming the kind of person who returns, even after a bad one, especially after a bad one. So tomorrow, when your alarm goes off, you're going to face the exact same choice Marcus Aurelius faced every single morning for nearly 2,000 years. Reach for your phone first, and let the world decide who you're going to be today. Or reach for yourself first, and decide that on your own terms. 10 minutes of quiet before anyone else gets a say. A few minutes of real silence to hear your own mind clearly. A body woken up gently instead of dragged into motion. One sentence of real wisdom before the noise of the day drowns it out. One honest answer to the question of who you want to be. And a few specific, unmissable reasons to be grateful you got another one of these at all. None of it takes long. All of it takes intention. The world will always be loud, demanding, and ready to hand you its version of who you should be the second you let it. But before any of that reaches you, there is this quiet window that belongs to nobody but you. What you do with it is, and has always been, entirely your choice. Marcus Aurelius closed one of his own morning reflections with a simple line to himself, a reminder that he was rising to do the work of a human being, not to scroll, not to react, to live on purpose, starting with the very first moments of the day. It's worth remembering that he was not writing to future readers when he wrote that. He had no idea, sitting there in the dark, that strangers on the other side of the world, 2,000 years later, would still be reading his private reminders to himself and finding something true in them. He wrote them because he needed them, because even an emperor forgets who he wants to be, over and over, and needs a way back to himself. If someone with that much power still needed a daily practice to hold his own mind steady, it's worth asking why the rest of us so often assume we shouldn't need one at all. You don't need to adopt every single piece of what you just heard tomorrow morning. Pick one, the quiet 10 minutes before your phone, the 5 minutes of real silence, the gentle movement, the single page of wisdom, the one honest answer to who you want to be, the 3 specific reasons for gratitude. Choose one, and do it with your full attention, and let the rest follow later, once the first one has actually taken root. Tomorrow morning, before anything else touches your hand, remember that you have the exact same choice he did. Rise on purpose.